To stand fully as the real awareness, true light beings that we each actually are, we must remove that which limits this position, the unreal, simulated layers and filters that are present through the ideas we have created and cling to. In creation, as the secondary personal self comes into being, as the ability to free will generate ideas becomes so we remove ourselves from the real awareness nowness position, and we begin to build the consciousness according to what the personal self decides, the utilizing of the body vehicles, the formulating of thoughts, and enhanced with emotion to effect that which the personal self desires and chases. The idea would be to generate the effects that we choose through the ideas we free will create, but then to maintain the recognition of ourselves as real awareness, that we can step into the true reality of ourselves and compare the two positions, the ideas, the thoughts, emotion, and corresponding simulation, to the everything position, the true reality that the real awareness is a part of, recognizing the difference between the pieces, the parts, that which we isolate and experience in the simulators through the body forms, to the everything whole of the isness, and then ultimately eventual recognition of this true reality everything becomes so, but becoming somewhat lost in the phenomena of our creations, as we all will, so will millions of lifetimes pass by, where we are immersed in the personal self only, the secondary position, and isolated from our real awareness, true self-isness positions. And although we still are, and always must be that which we actually is, real awareness, we somewhat encase our awareness within these layers of consciousness, as though entombed within endless filters of ideas. And although some ideas we will hold to more strongly and consciously than others, those we are emotionally attached with, which then are the ideas most likely to manifest their nature each lifetime around, as we are completely personal self-immersed, so we are in complete immersion with the consciousness. We hold to every idea it comprises of, which would include every idea we have created or agreed to as created by others since we first entered the simulators, irrespective of our being conscious of them or not, as naturally most of that which we have created, if we consider the millions of lifetimes we have experienced, and that each lifetime around we have only a direct access to the current memory body of lifetime experience, so the vaster bulk of the ideas we will be unconscious of, and would be stored in the subconscious. But the entirety of the consciousness, subconscious included, will be constantly affecting the ideas that make up its construct, and so regardless of what we consciously choose and are emotionally enthralled by, we are still the unconscious effect of ourselves, and as such, each lifetime cannot be exactly as we wish it to be, as every idea of the consciousness potentially can manifest as a simulated effect given the right circumstances. As I said, the process and real purpose then, if taken on, that of its recognition, involves a removing of all these ideas, a detachment from them. The ideas we consciously are aware of, perhaps being the easiest to identify therefore, but the vaster bulk of that which we are unconscious of requires facing and releasing also. And how would the personal self alone even understand the nature of some of the ideas we have created in, say, alien worlds so far removed from that which we currently know, our current memory references, that the essence of the idea can't even be determined? But through a connection with the true reality, through the NuUU song, so we are establishing our intent to stand with this true reality. Everything is intent, and experience, life positioning, must follow wherever our intent is placed accordingly. An intent placed with the ears requires this facing and releasing of the consciousness, so rather it is an automatic process, assuming the intent to do so is sincere. And what tends to happen is that, as we face certain ideas and release them, we generally experience on the real side the lifetimes, circumstances and situations where these ideas were originally consciousness installed. As you can imagine, much of which may be nonsensical, according to the lifetime, but then we can lean to the real awareness, where impressions afforded the personal self can draw a little light upon what's taking place, if it makes sense for such to be revealed, as really the simulation then is very secondary to the main purpose of what's taking place, that being the releasing of ideas. I experience this rather frequently, and have come to recognize the difference between idea-releasing experiences and experiences the guides provide us for our awareness processes and the various assignments throughout multi-dimensional creation, etc. We all tend to build our consciousness along certain established lines. We gravitate toward certain thrill-seeking endeavors. My general area of preferred experience in the simulators tended to be the more extreme, as though I always would seek to push the boundaries of what was possible. As such, I tended always to dabble with various magical systems. Black magics in all their forms and expressions, the utilizing of the psychic science facility of the ethereal, as I would endeavor always to learn each lifetime around how to access this body vehicle ability. This would lead to lifetimes where I would find myself as all manner of, let's just say, warped and distorted body forms and unenviable positions in creation, as an affected reflection of the dubious and unadmirable roads I would choose to walk down, and how impacting adversely on others this would be. Some of these experiences I have shared, but some I have not, or have watered down a little, as they can be somewhat extreme, but nevertheless they are in actuality just a simulated unreality, and although we are the effects of such, we will experience abrasiveness in equal measure to that which we administer. The idea is to disassociate attachment completely from the consciousness, regardless of how we have constructed it, the particular ideas we have chosen to experience, as effected from it, etc. And perhaps, as I share such experiences of past lifetime atrocities, so this will elicit certain reaction, providing an exercise then in indifference in the face of experience, regardless of its nature, be it ours or that shared by others, as after all, emotional or mental reaction are as created ideas as any other, and we would endeavour to move ever more so into a position where all ideas simply bounce off us. None are able to attach, and we don't create any additional ideas in response, or if we do, we recognise this and let them go also. This particular real side experience would be a facing and releasing of ideas associated with the black magic practices, a common theme, as I said, that is prevalent throughout my lifetimes. And so, as a certain idea is held to, so effected into future lifetimes will be the circumstances where such can be established again, as though each lifetime around I always would be walking into a pre-designed and by my hand film set with everything I needed and every individual that would help facilitate the perpetuation of this thrill-seeking inclination once again. I would be shown a series of lifetimes as though certain of them were strung together, though undoubtedly there were many in between that were along similar lines, one of which had me as a humanoid form, though there were differences to a standard human body type I fail to recollect, and I would be engrossed and focused in connecting with the powerful creational beings, as though seeking that they bestow their powers upon me through my connecting with them. Present also would be as though an assistant, and interestingly, although our forms were different, I would recognise this assistant as the individual currently in the role of my mother in this lifetime. Once again, we can see how we tend always maintain association with the same groups of individuals, although in different capacities, as the created identities and body forms of others are also ideas, that as we associate with them and forge emotional attachment, they will frequent our lifetimes regularly. And here, in whichever lifetime this was, my assistant would be arranging the various magical paraphernalia under my direction to induce a particular space where contact with these powerful beings could be established. Generally, such a practice is referred to as sympathetic magic, where what we create in our space forges a connection energetically and vibrationally in frequency terms with that which we are reaching out to, achieved through scent, sight, sound, etc. But whatever the methodology, It is just something decided and agreed to, something creationally established. In reality, we could pick our noses, and that could summon a demon if it is decided that that is the required technique. I would establish a contact. My awareness would be removed to a kind of hellish realm, where present would be the powerful beings I sought. They presented as vast, tentacled monstrosities, and my impressions were, these would be along the lines of beings referred to as ancient ones, long forgotten gods of old, still lurking where they do, but generally more secluded in recent times. Perhaps at the time of this experience they were not so old, as this was many lifetimes ago, as I said. This would be one of my earlier lifetimes, in fact, where I first delved into magical and dubious practices. And indeed I was successful, and these ancient beings bestowed upon me extreme capability. This would set the effected foundation for all the lifetimes to come, and through my misuse of such ability, so would I tend to assume the more distorted body forms, and operate in the more dismal creational areas, generally reigniting these same magical pursuits each lifetime around. In a lifetime that followed, at some point, perhaps not directly from the one just shared, it seemed I had momentarily abandoned my misuse of such a consciousness-developed ability. I had the inclination to utilize it for what I considered beneficial, though really, regardless of the usage, the justifications and considerations we apply, we still are the effects of what we decide, regardless of if we stand as the good guys or the villains. And so it was, that with my developed capabilities re-established again, in another far-away world, would I be a certain species, and was seeking to become associated with a particular order that was attempting to bring justice and righteousness to not only their planet, but throughout the local star system. It sounded all very grand and noble, and as I was accepted, so I would enter the inner sanctum of the order. They seemed to be based in a mountainous, desolate region of the planet. However, one of the members, a female, would be a seer of a kind, able to determine intent by scanning the individuals in her midst. But not only that, in addition, she was able to ascertain past lifetimes and the choices individuals had made. It seemed that to be part of this order, not only did my current intent have to be aligned sincerely with their principles, but that my past lifetimes had to be clean also, in that any dubious, ill-intended and abrasive activity would render me unsuitable. And so it was, she would scan me and announce my eligibility as void. I was rejected, and as she determined this, spines would sprout from my face, as though a physical verification for her that just as a certain symbology is a constant with humans on the real side, so different species would determine certain features to represent whatever they did for them, and for this species, it appeared, spines were indicative of former lifetime transgressions. I would be escorted from the cave-like catacombs, but before we reached the entrance, it was as though my past was catching up with me. The ideas I had agreed to, and consciousness installed in my past misused lifetimes, in regards to individuals I had had association with, those of an equally abrasive intent and inclination, that in this subsequent lifetime had chosen to maintain such intentionality, and were in fact the villains of the world I was in, and the immediate star systems, a little like the Star Wars Empire as an analogy, that the good guys, the Order, were in opposition to. A tremendous battle ensued, but it appeared the villains had a far greater magical capability, a particular magic that I had utilized in past lifetimes, that had been initially bestowed upon me by the Ancient Ones. I would describe it with a term that has been used in the series The Witcher, chaotic magic, a kind of warping, unsettling of the very simulation, then a reassembling in ways that are detrimental to those it is targeted at. Additionally, do the body forms of such practitioners warp also, become distorted to the point where they only vaguely resemble that which they once were, and in some cases they use these twisted forms to assail their targets, as the forms themselves are beyond being harmed. They are like malleable clay that is in a constant flux and forming whatever appendages are required to administer harm. With the order dispatched, they would confront me. Seems it wasn't only the seer that could determine my past lifetime activities, as these beings also had the ability to recognize that I once had affiliation with them in lifetimes past. They would insist I join them instead. I would refuse, and so was thrown also into a battle with them, as they and I both used our chaotic magics. I would specifically be engaged predominantly with a female, and our magical ability was not only of a similar nature, but stemmed from the exact same original source. For impressions revealed that this female was my assistant from the lifetime long ago. She had evidently followed in my footsteps, and connected with the Ancient Ones also, had been imbued with the same abilities, and walked the same relative path of cause and effect as I had. For even though the same kind of chaos magic was used by all the villainous types, she and I would specifically alter our forms into a kind of a nonsensical, tentacled mass, as though in reverence to the tentacled Ancient Ones who had once granted us our powers. This was a conflict with no end, as such magic had the bearer virtually unstoppable, and so that lifetime was spent in a constant altercation with these evil beings. Who were insistent I rejoin them, and as I would maintain a refusal of them, so they would continue to hunt me and engage me in a battle that could never reach a decisive outcome. And then would I be shown one of many lifetimes of a similar theme that followed, as I would find myself on another planet and creational position. it appeared I was once again involved in black magic pursuits, and in association with a very dark group of beings indeed. And although all were operating in one specific location, it seemed these beings were from all over creation, all manner of species and body types, those that had chosen this particular idea, that of black magic, and the utilizing of it for ill-intended purposes, as though they would gather here periodically for discussion and deliberation over certain endeavours and projects, either by a technological transportation from where they each hailed from, or by a magical means. In that lifetime it seemed a little more recent, as impressions suggested I was a female. I failed to determine my species, but it seemed I had an audience with the most powerful of the black magic practitioners. As such, he would have assumed the top spot, and all beings here would answer to him, although there would be beings more powerful than him, I'm certain, as my impressions were that he wasn't, say, one of the ancient ones, or a life-level god. He took the form of a large black wolf, reminding me a little of the wolf-like creature in the movie The Never-Ending Story, and indeed had the ability to speak despite his chosen form. He offered me two choices, to either accept his gods or revoke and reject them. On the surface, it would seem the first option the most likely. I hadn't been prepared or prepped for such a question, but having quite the ability to draw upon myself, so I rather read the situation and intuitively determined that to renounce his gods was the answer he required, for to answer incorrectly and he would kill me where I stood. As it is with beings of this type, they always desire for greater power, and to shake off the influence and dependency they may have had in association with others, perhaps the very same or similar gods that I originally acquired my abilities from millions of lifetimes ago. With the correct response, so was my safety assured, and that lifetime would I spend in association with this conglomeration of various species and body types, and their dark force black magic proclivities and agendas. As I said, overall, it was a real side experience of facing and releasing of this particular idea and attachment, that of black magic overwhelmingly, and as I did so, so would the various lifetimes in association with such an idea be re-experienced, of which I shared here but a few of all that I was shown, and many of which were far harder to determine as to the particulars, and put together in any cohesive manner. As I said earlier, really the simulation was a by-product of the process, that of facing and releasing the ideas of the consciousness. But as we face the ideas, we also must further decide their release, and so it was that I found myself in my current form. I would be as though isolated in a pocket dimension, far removed from everything else, but still operating in the overall simulated arena that all beings present within also share. Consequently, as we hold to the ideas of others, so they can at any time feature in our experience, as we somewhat hold the door open to them. And it was as though, as I operated in a segregated area of the simulator, this seemed to be a requirement, that this made it far more difficult for all those I had once had association with to reach me, the various dark force and black magic characters, etc., but not impossible, the sense of them advancing on me, but as though laboured, almost like them wading through a treacle. Before me now would be laid out every individual black magic orientated I had ever affiliated with, but as though miniature paper versions. The idea was that I was to release agreement and attachment with all these individuals, in addition to the general idea I had pursued for most of my lifetimes, that being a black magic practice in all its forms. But until this was done, so would all these individuals be seeking to establish themselves in my presence and experience, as though they sensed my intention to detach from them, and their reaction to this was to attack me, as seems a common response when we decide to remove agreement, particularly from dark, ill-intended beings. As I said, if I hold to the idea of them, so they always can feature in my experience. But the moments I needed to accomplish the releasing of these ideas was facilitated by my being in this curious dimensional pocket, which, although I couldn't hold them at bay, was delaying them somewhat, and affording me the time I needed to engulf the paper cut-out versions of all the individuals in flames, representing my burning of these idea attachments I had with them, and on doing so, I would be no longer bound and taplined to the idea of them, and now they only can enter my real side experience if I so consciously decide. The physical is a different matter. The real side instantly reflects our intent and the idea agreements and attachments. The physical is a somewhat delayed affair, where we are resigned to what we had decided in the lifetime previously, creational positioning, circumstances-wise, and individuals affiliated with, that although we may have released the agreements and attachments, the planet we are on, the people around us, have not changed, in that they are still present, except now we are not clinging to them, that we no longer are projecting with them into future lifetimes. For as I said, my original assistant would assume the role as another black magic practitioner who I would be in a constant battle with for an entire lifetime's duration, who would ultimately assume the role as my mother in my current lifetime. And although I have released these attachments to these characters, including then her, she is still present in my current physical reality. Although the timing of this experience and such releasing, especially with her and very likely others in my immediate current experience, who very likely were also similar black magic wielders from lifetimes past, coincides somewhat with my impending physical relocation to Mexico, as though a severing of certain tap lines to assist the process.
That was cool, Kevin. Yes. Basically, the idea is that, again, it's comparisons. And through all this funny stuff that we go through, we have to, and it passes so fast. You look at the lifetimes, and fortunately, we can't remember all these things, but you are here to do your part with what you do and to provide this. And these are comparisons, and also the reaction of those that you knew by the very fact that you're different and they really can't harm you now. They also see that because they're automatically reacting to only what they knew, but now by you showing up and showing them that what you do, they see that all of a sudden they have a new experience too to decide better. So this is how it works because we're all here in creation to wake up. It's just that simple. It's just very, very simple. But these comparisons are very much needed. And so we have the knowledge and the recognition that there is more than just creation itself and the gods and the authorities, that there is a reality where no authorities are needed at all. Not any, just like the air we breathe, there's no authorities. And that's very, very important because, again, the idea of power and all these things, these individuals, they can be strong in their body types and whatever, like a person here, and they can beat somebody else up, but the power aspect, no, it's not there. That's all only agreement, but we're taught in those terms. We're taught to, be afraid of these things, etc. We're taught fear. So your experiences bringing these out shows huge comparisons. Again, you're the great witness along with others as each person steps up and shares. It's very, very important because people need the comparisons, not just a one-dimensional literal view, like, oh, God is the answer, or I'll join the spiritual path and the master will take care of me, I'll get initiations, etc., and clean out my chakras, and all this stuff is cute, but it's all one-dimensional. Yes, you need that overall view, which is the isness, to be able to start to have a real education as opposed to what we have. So all this comparison is very important. And again, those involved, all of a sudden, through their reaction, they see that, oh, the old stuff isn't working. There's something else going on here. So that's their moment to decide. Will they investigate it? Will they look a little further? Will they ask a question? Whatever. Will the real awareness come in and do something different besides the old traditional routines? So that's really cool, Kevin. Thank you so much.